She's always been greedy, my sister announced, loud enough for the entire backyard to hear. I paid that loan back months ago, and she's still out here acting like I owe her something. 60 relatives turned to look at me. Kids stopped chasing each other around the lawn. My aunt's hand froze halfway to the potato salad. I stood there by the drink table, holding a paper cup of lemonade, and I smiled at my sister, Renee, the way you smile at someone who has no idea what's already sitting in your car. Because I had never received a single dollar back. Not one. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, hit the like button now. If you've ever stayed silent while someone underestimated you, comment here below. And subscribe to Story Retribution, because today's ending proves that karma always arrives, just not when people expect it. I need to explain who Renee was to me before any of this makes sense. Renee is my younger sister by 3 years. Growing up, she was the golden one, outgoing, charming, always somehow landing on her feet no matter how many risks she took. I was the responsible one, the planner, the one who read the fine print on everything. I became a project manager for a mid-sized construction firm, married my college boyfriend, bought a modest house, and built a quiet, stable life through nothing but consistent discipline. Renee bounced between jobs, relationships, and cities for most of her 20s. Our parents always excused it as her finding herself, while somehow expecting me to simply understand and support whatever came next. I loved my sister, I still do, in whatever complicated way you love someone who has spent years testing the edges of that love. The small betrayal happened about 2 years ago when Renee borrowed $600 from me for a car repair, promising to pay it back within a month. 2 months passed, then 4. When I finally asked about it at a family dinner, she laughed it off in front of everyone. "God, it's $600, she said. "I'll get you your money, relax." She never did. I let it go, quietly writing it off, telling myself it wasn't worth damaging our relationship over. The bigger betrayal happened 14 months ago, and this one wasn't $600. This one was $18,000. Renee called me on a Tuesday night, crying, saying she was facing an emergency medical bill after a car accident that her insurance was refusing to fully cover. She said she needed $18,000 within 2 weeks, or she would lose her apartment trying to cover the debt. She promised, over and over, that she would pay me back within 6 months once her insurance appeal went through. I hesitated. $18,000 wasn't something I kept casually available. But she was my sister, crying on the phone, describing a hospital bill in detail, and I had savings set aside for a kitchen renovation that could wait. I told her yes. Before sending the money, I did something I'm grateful for now, even though at the time it simply felt like basic responsibility. I asked Renee to confirm the loan over text message, not because I distrusted her, but because it was $18,000, and any responsible person would want something in writing. Her text messages that night were detailed and clear. She confirmed the exact amount, explained again that it was for the medical emergency, promised repayment within 6 months, and even thanked me multiple times, saying things like, "I don't know what I'd do without you, and I promise I'm good for it. I just need help right now." I transferred the $18,000 directly from my bank account to hers 3 days later. I kept the confirmation record, obviously, the way I keep records of everything important in my life. 6 months passed, no repayment. I gently brought it up during a phone call, and Renee brushed it off, saying her insurance appeal was still in process, and she'd handle it soon. Another 6 months passed. Still nothing. Every time I mentioned it, she grew defensive, accusing me of always keeping score or making everything about money. I started to notice something troubling during this period. Renee's social media, which I usually avoided scrolling through, showed a new car, a vacation to Cancun, and a recently signed lease on a nicer apartment. All within the same year she claimed she was too financially strained to repay an $18,000 medical debt. I didn't confront her about any of it directly. I simply started paying closer attention, the same instinct that had once made me ask for that confirmation text in the first place. About a month before our extended family's annual summer reunion, I reached out to a family law attorney, a man named Mr. Whitmore, who occasionally handled smaller personal finance disputes for people in my professional network. I explained the situation and asked what my options were if Renee never repaid the loan. He reviewed the text message confirmation I'd saved and told me it was solid enough to support a small claims case if it ever came to that, especially combined with the bank transfer record showing exactly when and how much money had left my account. I decided not to pursue anything legal yet. I still hoped Renee would eventually do the right thing on her own. That hope ended at the family reunion. The public humiliation scene happened during the afternoon barbecue, while most of the family was gathered near the picnic tables, plates piled with food, kids running through a sprinkler nearby. My aunt casually mentioned to Renee that she'd heard I helped her out with a loan a while back, clearly intending it as a kind, supportive comment about sisters helping each other. Renee's face tightened, and instead of simply confirming it graciously, she turned defensive in front of everyone. "I paid that back," Renee said loudly, setting down her plate. "Months ago. I don't know why she's still bringing it up like I owe her something." I hadn't said a single word about the loan that entire day. I hadn't brought it up at all. "She's always been like this," Renee continued, gesturing toward me while addressing the gathering crowd. "Keeping track of every dollar, acting like family owes her interest payments. It's honestly exhausting." A few relatives murmured uncomfortably. My cousin Danielle looked over at me with visible confusion, clearly unsure what to believe. "She's always been greedy," Renee repeated, louder this time, clearly performing for the growing audience. "I paid that loan back months ago, and she's still out here acting like I owe her something." That was the moment the silent preparation I'd been quietly building for weeks finally became necessary that same afternoon, rather than in some private conversation later. I set my lemonade down calmly. "Renee," I said, my voice even, "when exactly did you pay me back? Because I'd genuinely like to know since I haven't received a single payment." Renee's confidence flickered, just barely. "I sent it through Venmo," she said quickly. "Back in the spring. You probably just didn't notice." "I would have noticed $18,000, I said. The backyard went quiet enough that I could hear the sprinkler ticking rhythmically nearby. "Actually," Renee said, reaching into her bag with slightly too much haste, "I have the receipt right here." She pulled out a folded piece of paper and held it up like a trophy, a printed repayment confirmation showing a transfer of $18,000, dated back in April. I recognized the formatting immediately. It wasn't from any bank or payment app I'd ever used. The layout was slightly off, the kind of inconsistency I notice instinctively after years of reviewing project documentation professionally. "May I see that?" I asked calmly. Renee hesitated for just a fraction of a second before handing it over, clearly not expecting me to actually examine it closely in front of everyone. I studied it, then looked back up at the gathered family. "This isn't a real bank document," I said. "There's no transaction ID, no account verification number, nothing that any legitimate financial institution actually includes. This looks like something created using a template." "That's insane," Renee said, her voice rising defensively. "You're accusing me of forging a document at a family reunion." "I'm not accusing you of anything," I said. "I'm simply asking you to explain a repayment receipt that doesn't match the formatting of any real bank statement, for a payment that never actually appeared in my account." I walked to my car, retrieved the folder I had prepared weeks earlier with Mr. Whitmore's help, just in case this exact moment ever became necessary, and returned to the picnic table. "Here," I said, placing the first page down in front of the family members closest to us, "is the bank transfer confirmation showing $18,000 leaving my account and arriving in Renee's account 14 months ago." I placed a second page down. "And here are the text messages from that same week, where Renee describes the medical emergency, confirms the exact loan amount, and promises repayment within 6 months." "Wait, what?" my aunt whispered, staring between the documents and Renee's increasingly pale face. Renee's voice cracked slightly. "That was for something completely different. You're twisting the timeline." "The dates are right here," I said gently, pointing to the timestamps. "And your own words are right here too." I read a portion of the text message thread aloud, careful to keep my voice steady rather than triumphant. Renee's own messages, sent in a moment of genuine desperation over a year earlier, filled the backyard silence. Her promises, her gratitude, her explicit confirmation of the exact loan terms she was now publicly denying. Renee stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing without producing any sound, the fake repayment receipt still sitting on the table between us, like undeniable evidence of exactly how far she'd been willing to go. Then my cousin Danielle spoke up quietly from across the table. "Renee texted me last month," Danielle said hesitantly, glancing between us, "asking if I knew any good template websites for making fake financial documents look more official. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I thought it was for some school project." She looked down, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm sorry. I should have mentioned it sooner." The last quiet piece of evidence had fallen into place entirely on its own, from someone who hadn't even realized what they were witnessing until this exact moment. Renee's face had gone completely pale, the confident, performative anger from minutes earlier now replaced with something closer to panic. "I was going to pay you back eventually," she said quietly, her voice barely audible now. "I just needed time." "You had 14 months, I said. And instead of asking for more time honestly, you called me greedy in front of our entire family and forged a fake receipt to cover it up." My mother, who had been sitting silently at the head of the table throughout the entire exchange, finally spoke, her voice heavy with disappointment. "Renee, is this true? Did you forge that document?" Renee said nothing. She simply stared down at the picnic table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Mr. Whitmore, who I had quietly invited to the reunion as my +1, fully anticipating this exact possibility after Renee's escalating pattern of avoidance over recent months, stood up from a nearby table. "I represent her in this matter," he said calmly, gesturing toward me. "We have documentation ready to pursue formal repayment through small claims court if necessary, and creating a fraudulent financial document to avoid repayment does complicate matters legally, well beyond the original loan itself." Renee's shoulders sagged completely. The family reactions unfolded slowly around the picnic table after that. Several relatives who had murmured in confusion minutes earlier now looked at Renee with a mixture of disbelief and quiet disappointment. My uncle shook his head slowly, saying nothing, simply picking his plate back up and stepping away from the table. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice again after that. I simply gathered the documents back into my folder while Renee sat there, exposed, in front of the exact audience she had chosen to humiliate me in. The emotional resolution came quietly over the following hour, the way real reckonings often do. My mother walked over and sat beside me, squeezing my hand gently. "I'm sorry," she said. "I always told you to let things go for the sake of peace. I shouldn't have." "It's okay, Mum," I said. I let it go for a long time too. Today just wasn't a day I could keep doing that. Danielle came over afterward, apologizing again for not mentioning the strange text message sooner, and I told her honestly that she had nothing to apologize for. She hadn't known what she was seeing until the pieces came together in front of everyone. Renee left the reunion early, quietly, without saying goodbye to most of the family. Nobody stopped her. I stayed for the rest of the afternoon, sitting with my mother and Danielle near the sprinkler, watching the younger cousins play, feeling something steadier settle over me than I expected. Not victory exactly, but relief. The kind that comes after finally setting down something heavy you've been quietly carrying for far too long. The final lesson settled over me on the drive home that evening, watching the sun lower over the highway. Renee had spent years assuming my patience meant I would always eventually let things go, that my discomfort with conflict made me an easy target for repeated small betrayals that gradually became larger ones. She mistook my quiet responsibility for weakness, assuming the sister who always kept careful records, who always asked for things in writing, would never actually use any of it against her. She never imagined that the same instinct that made me ask for a simple confirmation text before sending $18,000 would eventually be the exact thing that exposed her, in front of the very family she was trying to impress. I never screamed at that reunion. I never called Renee a liar out loud, never listed every unpaid debt going back years. I let 2 documents and her own text messages do what over a year of quiet frustration never could, reveal the truth completely, undeniably, in front of the people she least expected to be watching that closely. Karma doesn't announce itself with shouting. It doesn't arrive the moment betrayal happens. Sometimes it waits patiently, sitting quietly in a folder in the trunk of a car, until the exact moment someone calls you greedy in front of everyone who actually knows the truth. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button right now. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my situation? If you enjoy stories about family betrayal, emotional drama, shocking revenge, and the justice that always finds its way back, subscribe to Story Retribution and turn on the bell so you never miss the next story. Tomorrow's story might be even more unbelievable. See you then.